they created this absolutely gorgeous looking commercial. This was the wrong way to do it.
They totally blew their execution of what is a fine idea.
It was smashing my head in a hydraulic press as I was watching this ad. I was like, is anyone on this marketing team familiar with the framing effect? Because it doesn't seem like it.
Apple has blown it. Apple has blown it. And they made the mistake of making an ad that I would think is cool.
Problems arise when you have people who can make creative decisions who aren't actually really involved in the process than the people grinding 16 hours a day making the show. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. I got a curveball for you at the beginning of this. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
You have a curveball that I don't know about this, right?
No, you don't.
I don't. Am I going to like it?
I think so.
Am I going to hate it? Am I going to seethe or celebrate?
No, I think you're going to, well, you might cringe, but you're not going to seethe. That's for sure.
Okay.
So I just thought of
Throw
something.
The curveball.
I thought of something today because you sent me a t-shirt of a particular man who recently went viral for an interesting visit to the gas station.
What? So you've betrayed my confidence already by saying that telling people that I send you these things. I will fall on the grenade here and explain to anybody who hasn't seen it what happens in this video. A man, and I think he's in Italy, was an older man. I'd say he's probably 65, give or take. He's standing at a gas pump, and the actual pump he has put in his bottom. He's really grinding it too. And then he's working his own magic on the front of himself. And it's all completely exposed. I mean, this isn't subtle. He dropped his pants and went bonkers with this. And then they yelled at him and he stopped and, he's like, oh, kind of got caught there as if it was like he got caught picking his nose or something. Some like mild social transgression.
In broad daylight, mind you.
Yes.
In broad
this had
daylight.
To be like 2 p.m. Yeah. There's no, it's not, it's also not, there's no indication he's like really drunk or something too. It seems like he's just hanging out doing his thing.
Oh, he's hanging out all right. And he's also doing his thing for sure. Both of those things are definitely true. And I don't know if anybody listening has seen this video. You might have to be some form of terminally online perhaps to have seen this. I don't know.
I'm just laughing at somebody having dipped from the episode chat as we discuss this.
I know. Right.
I hear that.
Right. Which did worry me with your, previous description of the act. I was hoping that you would make it as sort of nondescript as you could while also describing what was occurring. And I think you did a very good job at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Isaac. Isaac is worse than that guy. So,
so
Isaac, he just had to go.
He just had to
completely
go.
Fine.
So, yes. Okay. So this video is making the rounds on my feed, at least. I don't know if anyone else's feed happens to have this gem on it, but yeah, this older gentleman is in this bizarre act with this gas pump.
Yeah.
And then his front pump is also exposed, which he is also, utilizing. The whole thing is so weird and so bizarre.
Yes, it is.
You could never imagine anything like this ever occurring. I could never imagine anything like this occurring. It is that strange to see.
If you saw it in a stupid movie, you'd just be like, oh, this is beyond jumping the shark. Like they just constructed the most insane, horrible thing they could think of. But it's happening at this gas station with what appears to be just a guy you'd see on the street. It's real. It's real. And this is all in 8 seconds. I mean, they packed a lot in. to a short period of footage.
Yeah. It would be like the most disgusting cut scene from Freddy Got Fingered by Tom Green or something like that. And what it sparked in me, and now of course there are memes about it, and the internet is doing its thing with this video.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the curveball, because what are you putting on this curveball? I did not expect this to be the premise for where you were going with literally anything. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so that is the curveball. That's why I just wanted to sort of jump you at the beginning of this podcast with this topic that I really wanted to discuss, because there is actually a reason to think about it a little bit more. Now, so these dots are going to seem strange, but these are the dots that connected in my brain. So first of all, this video is very disturbing and disgusting and graphic. Yes. And I think potentially only a portion of very dark humor minded people would even find it amusing, or let alone funny. So I did want to get that out as well. That yes, I'm sorry to say that I find it very funny. I know you find it very funny. There are probably plenty of people who are disgusted by the fact that we even are amused by this level of just unfathomable human debauchery.
It is depraved, yeah. And we've just even talking about this, we've disappointed not just our parents, not our living families. We've disappointed everybody between our genes and Adam and Eve.
And probably
it's that bad.
Yes, thousands of our listeners. But this is why I wanted to bring this up, okay? Because I found it so shocking that it became funny. And now other people are creating memes that are very funny, like objectively funny, sort of as ancillary content to this horrific act. Now, sorry, I'll get to the point. Over a decade ago, I had a conversation with a comedian named Trevor Moore, who passed away, horribly passed away, way too young. But I spoke to him probably 2013, something like that, about comedy, because this was at the time when I had really kind of abandoned comedy. I was doing comedy really as my main pursuit for many, many years, and stopped doing it and started doing the Vsauce stuff, which obviously has sprinkles of humor, but is mainly educational, not comedic. And at that time, the conversation I was having with him had to do with the state of comedy and really sort of the future of comedy as a written performed art. Because I believe this was after his show. He had a sketch comedy show called The Whitest Kids You Know. And I think it was after that had ended, and he was doing some other stuff and just trying to find sort of what was next for him. And it was really kind of a murky time in comedy. And now I think sort of 10 years later, we can really see the effects of how a lot of that played out. So one of the effects is that Comedy Central as a channel it's not gone, but it's pretty dead. They don't really do a whole lot anymore. They're way past their heyday of, Chappelle's Show, and South Park's still around, but they had that period of dominance, which was really a long time ago now at this point.
It was. It was where the funny stuff was. And, I know that Cartoon Network is dealing with a similar thing where that was where the cartoons were, and now the funny and the cartoon is in a lot of different places.
It is. And even on Cartoon Network, Adult Swim has seen some weird shakeups and stuff. And, obviously our friends Michael and Zach are crushing it with Smiling Friends. But I mean, other than that, there's not a really, that has really kind of progressed since its heyday as well. And then you have comedic films, which are also all but dead.
Kinda, yeah. Adam, what's his last name? Divine?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had an interview about this maybe a year ago where he just said the state of the funny movie is completely different now. And there's 3 funny movies a year. And it used to be just a constant stream. Like if you wanted to go to the movies, it was, do you want to see the action movie? Do you want to see the comedy? Do you want to see the romance film? Whatever, because all these things were kind of always there. Some were better than others, but every year there were defining comedies of that year. And now it's what is a monumental shared comedy for everybody, like Ace Ventura was however long ago. Like I can't name one of those from the last 5 years.
No, or even really 10. I don't know. It's stretching it. The Anchorman hangover days are long behind us. They're long behind us.
Yeah.
He quantified it as well. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he said something like there were around 42 comedy films released in theaters every year in the past, and now it's down to like 6, something like that. So we've gone from basically a new one every week to a new one every other month, which is grim.
Yeah. And they're, pumped out on the streaming services too. Like Netflix releases a lot of comedy films, but they're not those, big theater things that were, events for everybody in the past.
Yeah, there are not cultural touch points with comedy anymore in Hollywood. And here we go. I'm going to bring it back to Gas Pump Man. It's Gas Pump Man's fault. And it's the fault of things like this, because the internet has made it impossible for comedy to be funnier. Now, this is a generalization. So obviously there are still things like Smiling Friends that are so funny and genius and clever that make the world better and we love. But in general, there are things that happen online out of the blue that you can never imagine virtually every day that cannot possibly, that something like written and gone through a committee and executives and like all of the different approvals and finally production and post-production. I mean, that process cannot compete with a gas station man from Italy showing up on your timeline and being the funniest thing that you've seen that week until the next, similar gas station man thing pops next week. And you're like, the world is just so much funnier than comedians can compete.
The world is funnier. Did you ever watch that interview with Groucho Marx and William F. Buckley?
Yes.
About the topic here is the world funny? I like that show, Firing Line. I've watched every episode of Firing Line, despite it being, a relic of the past. This one with Groucho is probably, 1975, give or take. I can't remember. And it's really interesting to think about that discussion they had in the context of now we actually get to see the funny world in a way that was not a thing when they were having that conversation. It was not a thing in Groucho Marx's lifetime, but we can see the all manners of funny, from goofy little pranks to things that are so horrible they're funny, like Gas Station Man.
Yeah, like babies. Like there are I want to be clear that like macabre and horrific things are not the only things that I find funny. There are funny like baby meme accounts that you could just look at all day with babies doing crazy stuff that's hysterical, like eating straight out of a pot of rice in a refrigerator and sticking their whole head in a pot of rice, and now they got rice all over their cute baby face. It's very funny.
My feed is that with cats. And if you look at my bookmarks, the bookmarks are basically two things. One is reminders for something that I want to look up. So like 100% related to professional endeavors. And that's probably 20% of my bookmarks. And the other 80% are cat videos, because then on my phone, I will download the video and send it to people on text. And that's it. That's my bookmarks.
Yeah, that picture of the cat with the big belly with an arrow pointing to it that just says full of soup. Is hilarious.
That's my desktop on one of my computers. Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. Did I send you the one today about that has the man? It's 4 seconds long, and it's in a very busy kind of urban center, and this guy is screaming with a great deal of profanity. Stop filming me, you, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna kick your ass and all this stuff. But he's just got a cat sitting on his head. He's wearing a baseball cap, but the whole time the cat's just hanging out. It's incredible, and I don't know why he's mad. I don't know why he's walking around town with a cat on his head. It's doubly excellent because the tuxedo markings on the cat are just like my cat Pig. It's like Basewait's cat Terry. But yeah, this cat's just hanging out on this guy's head as he's screaming. Like, this is incredible. This is funny. This is funny. And how does that, as a funny scene, make it into anything on TV or a movie?
No, I don't know. I don't know. But even if it did, you know, you don't need it to, because you just saw it in real life, which makes it even funnier, because it's a real angry man on an angry tirade with a cat sitting on his head in real life.
Yes.
It's just naturally funnier. You can't compete with that.
I want to make this audience losing political. Can I do that?
Okay.
So this really is the difference between planning things and letting them happen. And there's a reason why the funniest stuff and the best comic books and the best music, the best literally everything culturally came out of the United States in the 20th century, as opposed to coming out of the Soviet Union, which had the layers of approval and set missions for things the same way that movie studios do. You know, so it's like they would decide, we want a movie about X. And then it goes through this insane process of finding, not just who's going to do it, but then it has to get written and it's approved by, committees of non-movie people.
Commissars.
Commissar. Yeah, it really is. This whole bureaucracy of stuff for something that really should just be art, China is not pumping out insanely funny TV series for the world right now. Well, Europe is, the United States is. I watch lots of them that are dubbed. It's not, it's not even a language issue in these things. It's just like, literally, how do you make media? Well, as controlled and manufactured as TV and movies are now, everywhere, like especially the US. Disney is figuring this out right now with Marvel, what the problems are when you try to do it this way. It's still better than what's coming out of China and also Russia. A great number of things in Putin's Russia are state-sponsored and state-controlled and mandated, even when they appear not to be. Well, guess what? The best movies aren't coming out of those places. And that's because they aren't letting the world be funny. They aren't. And the books, which great books have come out of these societies, because you can really sneak the stuff in. You can be...
Well, especially Russia. I mean, many of the greatest books are Russian.
Absolutely. Yep. And you can sneak in, satire, for example, and especially the really dark stuff. It's easiest to sneak big themes into dark things because the darkness obscures, right? It's hard to obscure things the more realistic it is. So the crazier it can be, or the darker it can be, the easier it is to sneak one by the commissars. So, and the Russians certainly know misery and darkness better than anybody in, the history of the world. So it's a case of, what do you get when you let things happen versus what do you get when you plan it? And as I wanted to lead with this divisive take, because there's a frivolous take that we have all seen the full life cycle of now. Grumpy Cat was funny as hell initially. It was an outstanding meme. It was just, it was a true internet sensation. Then a lot of things started to latch on to Grumpy Cat. And the peak of this was getting Aubrey Plaza to narrate, to be the voice of Grumpy Cat in a Grumpy Cat movie. Well, when they started planning Grumpy Cat for commercial success, it stopped being funny. It stopped being funny. You can't, it was dead. It was done. We watched, Kevin, you and I watched about a month ago, a trailer to a film that never got made. This film was a collection of the most famous meme people on the early internet. All of these were spontaneous meme successes. It was Numa Numa guy, right? He was in there. It was Boom Goes the Dynamite sports announcer. It was Tay Zonday with Chocolate Rain. I forget the others.
Double Rainbow was in there.
Double Rainbow, yeah.
And Antoine Dodson was like a main character. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah, this is all of these things were fantastic in their own way. And so the idea for this movie was to put them together and have somebody kind of, I think, disappear, get lost or kidnapped or something in this meme world. And I don't know the rest. I don't know if the memers like combined forces to save her. I don't know. Well, the trailer exists for this film. The film does not exist because it's a horrible idea executed hopelessly. That trailer was painful as hell.
Yeah.
It was really bad. Well, you get, in this case, 6, 7, 8 proven successes that the entire world has signed off on being entertaining. That's how they got established. Literally, humanity decided that these things were incredible. And then somebody decides to put them in a room together and intertwine them in the plot of a movie. And it is one of the cringiest movie trailers I have ever seen. It's horrible. It's just awful. Okay, so there you go. Spontaneous, funny world happening, and we get to see it versus somebody trying to plan it.
Yeah, it comes across contrived immediately. I want to talk about this Apple crushing creativity commercial, but before we do that, I was just thinking about one of the things that is so funny that Zach and Michael do on Smiling Friends is that they bring a lot of real life into the cartoon. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous because the cartoon is so absurd. The characters are so absurd. But the juxtaposition that they create, which is so brilliant, is having these bizarre, weird, alien-like creatures having really mundane human interactions. You know, the episode where they go to Brazil being sort of like the lighthouse version of that, where they're just arguing over like, why didn't a hotel get booked and what are they going to do now? And they call the boss and the boss is like, well, I don't know what you guys are going to do. Good luck. All of that is so mundane and real. And I think that's where a lot of the beauty of the comedy of Smiling Friends comes from. And they're such geniuses to extract that. They're really kind of doing a lot of what we're talking about, which is bringing reality into, what's otherwise a very abstract and surreal and unrealistic world. So the main topic, now that we're half an hour into the podcast, has to do with this Apple commercial that came out, I believe, last week. That, oh boy, the entire internet was in an uproar over this commercial for the new Apple iPad, which the crowning feature of this new iPad that they were trying to demonstrate with this commercial is that it's the slimmest iPad ever. It is extremely thin. It is very, very, very slim. That is...
Okay. Wasn't it already like half an inch?
I mean, that's been some of the stuff that I've read that it's like, I never had a problem with like the iPad being too thick. But
I know. Yeah. The last one I had was, if not the original, it was the second series. And I used it for like the most basic things on a nightstand. I'd gotten it super cheaply used. I got it for like $40 or something. And the only thing that wasn't awesome about it was the battery life. But the actual iPad itself, the screen was great. It did all the things I needed it to do. And it was, relatively lightweight. And that was like 10,000 generations ago on iPads. So it hasn't even occurred to me to look and see. All of my information on new Apple devices and new iPads and stuff comes from following Justine. That's it. Whatever she says about the thing is the attitude and opinion that I adopt, pretend like I came up with it through my expertise, and that is my Apple personality. It's the iMat, just like Justine.
Yeah. Well,
so that's the extent of my knowledge here.
That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge, was just watching this commercial and the furor surrounding it. One thing that
furor, how can it be so bad?
Let me get to that in a second. I want to do a little bit of a tangent about marketing because I'm interested in marketing. I do marketing with the Curiosity Box. I like to think about marketing. When it comes to marketing, one of the only options that you have, or one of the main options that you have with marketing, is like a technological improvement. Now you can market. Now you will see this with the best example I can think of. Well, I can think of two good examples of technological improvement marketing: razor blades, like shaving razors, and toothpaste. The only way that toothpaste companies and these shaving companies pretty much gain any sort of market advantage is by creating some sort of technological achievement with it. This new toothpaste has 3D whitening ultra globulator strips that will give you the whitest teeth possible. And, this new Gillette razor has 75 blades on it and a rolling ball on the bottom, which it makes it the greatest razor of all time. And you have to buy it.
I want to say something about this razor bit. Have you seen this commercial about a new Gillette thing? And the kids, it's a kid and a dad. Have you seen this? Okay. The kid, they start off, the kid's like, this is not your dad's razor. And then the goofy dad is angry about this. And he's like holding up his mug of coffee. He's angry. And he has this grating accent that I can't even figure out exactly where it's from. I think they put all of New Jersey in a blender and poured out this accent. And the guy's like, "Hey, watch it." This isn't my dad. This isn't, your dad's razor. And the dad, "Hey, watch it."
What's wrong with my razor? I'm going to beat you for insulting my razor.
It's the straight, it is the potato voice. It's very much like that. Yeah. But it's so strange to me. I'm like, who is getting angry at that? Who's taking serious offense to that? And now that I'm ripping on Jersey, I see Dan the Latch is typing in the chat. So this is
right there. His identity is tied into what razor he uses to shave his face each morning. That seems far-fetched.
Yeah. His son is like, "Oh, there's a really good razor in the marketplace now." God damn it. Don't bring that up in my house. As long as you're under my roof. No.
You'll use the Mach 3, which is good enough for me. And it's good enough for you, Billy. We don't need the roller ball and the 17 blades.
If it was good enough for your grandpop in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah. Soothing
it's
strips.
Good enough for your stupid face.
Forget about it. Yes. So, well, there you go.
Anyway, this makes no sense to me.
That's what they do. This is what they do. So anyway, that's what they're doing here with the iPad Slim is that this is their new technological advantage, I suppose, over the other competing tablets, is that this one is thinner than ever. So in order to exemplify how thin this iPad is, they created this absolutely gorgeous looking commercial, just stunningly visually beautiful commercial of a series of creative instruments, ranging from musical instruments to painting and, any sort of tool that you would ever possibly use to create some sort of art or creative expression. They have this all lined up inside a hydraulic press, and the hydraulic press slowly comes down and it smashes all of these gorgeous instruments that people spend and dedicate their lives to, becoming masters of, guitars and pianos and whatever it is. It smashes them into smithereens and then closes. And then when it opens back up, all you're left with is the slimmest iPad ever. That's the ad.
Can you pop this into the episode chat? Because I haven't seen the ad. I haven't seen it, and I don't follow enough people on Twitter who would talk about this or weigh in on this. So I'm pretty clueless. What you described sounds okay. I mean, and Apple notoriously makes beautifully shot and edited ads. A guy I know used to do them for the iPhone way back in the day, and they were great then, and they're great now. But yeah, I haven't seen this. I don't know if the ad would move me or make me even think about an iPad, but it sounds from what you said fine. Oh my God, whatever you just linked me to is a novel.
A novel?
So they're calling it the Crush ad. Well, yeah, I don't know how much you have to pay to Mr. Musk to be able to write tweets that are this long, but this is easily like 800 words, 1,000 words.
Oh, well, so I sent you a tweet of someone complaining about the ad. It's not a tweet, it's not the ad itself. The ad is embedded in this tweet by some guy named Ron Stauffer, and I'll just read the tweet so that people, listening can know exactly what everybody else is looking at in the chat. Oh wait, no, I'm not going to read all of this.
This is going to be a 3-hour podcast if you read this
I
tweet.
never actually clicked show all. I'm not going to read the whole tweet. I'll just read the beginning. You're right. It is like a novel. Okay, so the beginning of this is just, I don't know if you've seen Apple's just released commercial for the new iPad Pro, but it's pretty awful. It is dark, humorless, and feels like a not so thinly veiled threat to writers, musicians, game makers, developers, and artists of all kinds, and children even. I've watched it at least 5 times today alone, and I'm left with one big question. Who on earth approved this? And now it goes on and on and on and on, talking about how terrible it is and how terrifying it is. And it's enough to make a child cry. It's a bit hyperbolic, but this was, the level of discourse that sort of erupted around this ad of a hydraulic press crushing all of these creative instruments to make the iPad. So are you watching it now?
I've seen it all. Yeah. I mean, so it is one thing from start to finish. It's this giant collection of everything creative and artistic stacked up, and it gets crushed. Okay. So you can scrub through and get the idea here. I'm a little bit at a loss with the things that you just read out. I mean, like, it's dark in the sense that it looks like it's in kind of like a grim warehouse. The colors and the lighting and stuff are on the darker side.
It is dystopian looking. You're right. That probably doesn't help.
A little bit.
It is. It's all like cold metal and blue light. It's pretty grim visually.
Yeah, and I don't fully understand that. I don't know why they would go with that. But none of the other stuff, like, I'm going to pass on this straight away to you because I don't understand where to begin here. When somebody's talking about it being threatening and like upsetting to children, I don't understand. So I need help here.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I find that person's take on it to be a smidgen hyperbolic and a little over the top, and a lot of over the top, really. It's just kind of absurd to call this like terrifying to children. It's not like there is a literal baby inside that gets smashed to smithereens. No one died here. It's just a bunch of tools and equipment that got crushed.
Right.
But what I thought was interesting, so I didn't have like a viscerally, disgusted reaction to this. I just thought immediately, like, quite honestly, I thought this was the wrong way to do this idea. That was the first thought I had. I was like, I see what they're doing. I see what the idea is. I see what the goal of this commercial is and their marketing campaign. This was the wrong way to do it. Because it's destructive. It's literally destructive. The whole ad is destroying. And this is a big thing with me when it comes to marketing. And it's something that I talk about a lot internally when it comes to things like the Curiosity Box. But even, the way that we present things on Vsauce 2 or in Popular Science, where unless you are trying to make the point, unless you're trying to make a destructive point, you should not communicate and message things destructively. You should almost never do that because there's always the opposite way of doing it, which is, building things up and being positive and creating. I mean, they are destroying creativity in order to promote a thin iPad that you could perform creative tasks on, I guess. It's just simply the wrong way to get this message across.
Okay. So this is where we begin to split. And I think we're going to split here in, I want to split with you while also agreeing that you're right on this.
Okay.
The problem here, I think, with everybody reacting to this ad, what they've said and what you just said is that they're seeing it as destruction. And I think that Apple was a little bit too clever for their own good here. A hydraulic press is about compression.
Yes, right.
This ad is meant to push all of those things in to the tiniest, thinnest iPad ever invented.
Yes.
That's the mindset. That's the pitch. whatever. But what everybody's seeing is destruction. And the way they filmed it too, I mean, it's focusing on all of these things shattering and breaking, the video game cabinet and
and oozing and exactly.
Paints and all. Yeah, so it betrays that notion of compression all into one fabulously thin thing. So they totally blew their execution of what is a fine idea. It's a fine idea in theory that you are pressing all of this stuff in. But the way it's actually pictured and the way it would be in reality, everybody has seen those clips of like bowling balls under hydraulic tension that shatter, and like golf balls and tennis balls. And that's awesome content, and that process yields fantastic destruction. That's what makes it cool to watch. So they have this theoretically very good concept that in practice and execution is chaos. It's all those things you just said. It's destruction, not some nice clean thing where it all gets pressed into the tiniest little cube. Like that would be cool. If it were a trash compactor type thing where the output, that would have worked. That would have worked. If you think about like in Star Wars, they're stuck in the trash compactor. Well, that's making these little compressed units of garbage, right? If there was a compressive thing that preserved it all, and then when you open it back up, it's this really thin iPad, then you've done what they wanted to do without all the destruction that everybody's having a problem with. So you're exactly right. I just want to defend their idea. They blew it though.
Yeah, they blew it. Yeah, like what you're saying, if they morphed it, it turned into some sort of like claymation thing or something where it all smushes into the iPad without breaking it. Mm-hmm. They broke everything. Like you can't break everything in order to put it into the iPad. It's all broken.
Apple was built in part on a shattering commercial.
Yeah.
The 1984 commercial throwing the hammer at the Big Brother screen. I mean, and I want to see the episode chat here. Ducky has a nuanced take on this about creativity and destruction. And I get that theory too. Honestly, like this video to me is more realistic than I think people would admit, where everything is messy and horrible and blows up all the time and is disastrous. That's generally how every creative thing goes. Now, are the optics good? No,
you're getting way too conceptual about some. Now you're like way out on a limb about the concept, right? And not, standing in the middle of what's actually happening, which is like, it's pretty hard to write a song on a guitar that's in 4,000 pieces. It's super hard. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's very hard. You don't write the next banger on your piano that is in splinters.
I think people are extremely sensitive to destruction now. And I'm not trying to go too meta on this, but like, in the 80s when somebody smashed a guitar on stage, it was rad. It was cool as hell. It was great. And now if somebody smashes a guitar, it's like, don't you realize that you could have FedExed that overnight to a talented youth in Somalia who could grow up to be the next Randy Rhoads? There's this element of like disapproval of the waste of it all. And there's the beauty in destruction is gone. And now it's just like straight up grim destruction. And I don't think Apple realized that.
Yeah. But before the 80s, I think the Who were really at the forefront. You don't like the Who, do you?
I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. And we have a Who super fan in the chat in Boss Threads.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe Boss Threads could back me up. I think the Who were really like the guitar, or the people who popularized smashing guitars. Pete Townsend.
Yeah. Pete Townsend should have morphed into smashing his hard drives. But no, you're right. The Who really got that destruction kind of thing. And then in the 70s, a couple people, made it bigger and better. And eventually you get, Ozzy biting the head off a bird. But yeah, the destruction was cool. Lighting things on fire was awesome for a while. And now it's just bad. It's just, you've destroyed a thing, and for what?
Yeah. So the outpouring of outrage has been all over the place over this ad. And, when I said earlier that my first instinct when watching this was that this was the wrong way to do that, it has to do with this thing that Daniel Kahneman coined called the framing effect. So Daniel Kahneman, who actually just recently passed away, was one of the greatest thinkers of all time about thinking. We did a couple of videos
absolutely.
on Vsauce 2 based on his work, one on the anchoring effect, another one on System 1 versus System 2 thinking. So if you've watched those videos, you're familiar with Daniel Kahneman's work. So he had one of the many things that he coined was this thing called the framing effect, which is the presentation of information affects decisions with varying outcomes based on different phrasings. So this is basically what you do all day, Matt, when it comes to writing, is the framing effect. That's what a lot of copy editing is thinking about diction, what words you're using, what words are better than other words, the way that you phrase something and how that's going to be perceived by people or could be perceived by people, and whether you want to adjust that or you want to leave it because you want that reaction. I mean, these are the thoughts that go into your brain when you're writing something, but these are the thoughts that need to go into everybody's brains when they're creating anything that other people are going to react to or expected to consume in some manner. And the framing effect was just like bashing me it was smashing my head in a hydraulic press as I was watching this ad. I was like, is anyone on this marketing team familiar with the framing effect? Because it doesn't seem like it.
No, they don't seem to be. The framing is the problem, isn't it? So there are two parts to this to me. You have the framing of a thing, and then you have all the little details in the execution. Okay, and I tend to think about it in musical terms, where when it comes to writing, every word that you use is basically a music note. And the combinations of those words and phrases and sentences and paragraphs is those notes combining into music, right? And if you are off by a half step, it sounds really bad. And you don't have to be any kind of musician to hear that there's a wrong note in this chord. It's very jarring. So you have to get this right. That all exists within the framing of the thing. I think they focused on what they did is very well shot, and it's a great concept. It's cool as hell. Everything is good about it. They got all the notes right. They really did. It's a good song. It's a great song. But they've tried to do like a sweet 1950s, will she go to the dance with me? She says no, I will never recover from this song through like death metal, and it's this crazy mismatch. Well, okay, the framing error is what wins. That I think the framing part is so important because it lives or dies based on whether that framing is right. Does that fit your experience on the marketing side?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of all of this stuff as you start with a goal, okay? No matter what you're doing when it comes to messaging, when it comes to marketing, is that you start with a goal. What is the goal of this ad? What is the goal of this announcement? What is the goal of this email? What are we trying to do? You have to start there and you have to be clear about what you're trying to do. The goal of this ad is really obvious. The goal is right in front of your nose. It's to communicate that this little tiny, extremely thin device is capable of doing the entire world's creativity in it. Whether you're a musician or you're a digital artist, you're an illustrator, no matter what you do creatively, the whole world and all of its talented people can use this extremely thin device to achieve, their next masterpiece. That's the goal of the ad. That's what they're trying to say. It's very, very obvious. It's not a mystery at all.
And it's all packed into one device, whether you are a video gamer or you are painting things or whatever, because literally everything is in that giant conglomeration.
Yeah, no
of
matter
stuff
who
that gets
you
crushed.
are and what you do, yes.
All in this device. Whatever you want to do is in this device.
And it is extremely thin. This extremely thin device. It's all packed,
and
packed in here.
Can you believe how thin and light and small this thing is? Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So they tried to achieve that. Obviously, we talked about it by crushing all of those tools into the device and exploding them and breaking them. That's the wrong framing. You can achieve the same goal in different ways. Now, one of the ways that I thought, there have been attempts at this right away. There were attempts at this. There was a really funny attempt at this from someone who just reversed the footage. They just reversed the commercial so that you start with this thin, tiny iPad and then you open the press and it reveals all of these instruments.
That I like.
It's the same thing. It's just backwards. Yeah.
But it's totally backwards, right? And so, Ducky says it's a clever ad. That satisfies that conceptual creativity versus destruction stuff that Ducky mentioned and that I agree with. By doing it in reverse, you get all of the power of this ad without the liability of the framing. And out of it at the end, you get a huge pile of incredible varied stuff. It's exactly the same message that they wanted to convey, but it actually works. And all they did was play it backwards. That's it. There were no other changes.
That's it. You just play it backwards. Yes. And right. And at the end of it, you're left with this beautiful shot of this press that's full of all these $1,000 instruments, multi-$1,000 instruments.
Yeah.
So that's probably the simplest way to do it. I thought of another one instantly, which was kind of like a Mary Poppins idea. So
okay,
in Mary Poppins, if anyone is not familiar with that film, Mary Poppins has a magical purse. She has a magical bag in Mary Poppins that she can just pull anything out of. She pulls, I mean, I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but she pulls obviously gigantic items that couldn't fit in a bag of that size out of this magical bag. She could pull a tuba out of this small bag. She could pull an entire piano out of this small bag, a lamp post. It doesn't matter. It's a magical bag. And I thought that framing would work for this commercial, is you have this extremely thin item, this iPad, and then you create some, de-aged Julie Andrews as Mary Poppins pulling saxophones and oboes and game consoles and whatever that is in the ad. She's pulling it out. So you're extracting what's already in this thin thing. So you're pulling out these things that you can use rather than the opposite. Again, this is just kind of like a different framing, a different version of the reverse hydraulic press idea. But the principle is the same, is rather than smushing and smashing into it, you are pulling out of it.
I think people use this general idea effectively a lot and kind of always have. We were recently doing a bit of work in the Roald Dahl archives, right? This is what happens in the Giant Peach. In James and the Giant Peach, that peach pit is a bit of a portal to have, much larger, physically larger, grander things. The Weasleys pitch a tent at the Quidditch World Cup, and it's tiny and looks grim and awful. And then, you open the flap to it and it's like this giant lodging thing. Boss Red says the TARDIS in Doctor Who. Yes, exactly. And the Magic School Bus too could go in the USB-C port of the iPad and zip around, literally anything creative and then come back out and have that same concept of a whole lot of really big things are coming out of / are contained within this super thin device. All of those approaches to framing it would have, I don't know how well they'd work, but I know they wouldn't have gotten anybody angry.
Yeah.
Nobody would have been like, oh, this is upsetting. This is harming children. This is threatening.
Yeah. Think of the children. Won't somebody think of the children? Yeah.
What a twisted reaction, by the way.
That
is so ridiculously dumb that are children going to be upset by this?
No.
So you saw this on Twitter. It's a tweet that you linked with this whole thing. Oh, children are going to be upset by this. Keep scrolling, buddy. There's a dude at an Italian gas station in the next tweet with a pump up his ass.
Yeah, who's fueling up in the most vile way imaginable. he's powering up at the gas station right below this Apple ad of smashing a piano. Yeah, which one of these is really harming the children?
Yeah, think of the children. Did you see that trumpet that got bent? That's the first thing, by the way. If you haven't seen this, the tip of this iceberg of creativity is a trumpet, and that's the first thing that gets contact with the top of the hydraulic press. Well, yeah, keep scrolling, and then you see a guy cranking the hell out of his oboe with a gas pump on it.
Yeah,
my God. But yeah, it's like, what's wrong with the world? You know what's so threatening in the entire world? This Apple ad, not any of the absolutely horrible things that exist every second.
Yes, the endless parade of horrors that are on the internet everywhere else. Exactly. So there was one thing that popped. I'm glad that we, waited a bit to record this, because something really funny happened yesterday, which is that Samsung, their direct rival on tablets and smartphones, quickly slapped together an ad making fun of this hydraulic press Apple ad, where I'm sure very few people have seen this rebuttal ad, but I just saw it as I was looking up references for the ad before we started recording. A girl picks up a smashed guitar. She's walking amongst the debris, the chaos from this Apple ad, and she finds a guitar that is still functional enough. And she picks it up and starts playing a song on this destroyed Apple guitar. And she's recording her new song on a Samsung device.
Yeah, the Galaxy Tab.
I just thought that was so clever that they instantly were like, hey, here's an opportunity.
It ends, and she's sitting on this platform that's covered with all the paint, all the dripping stuff that got there. She's playing the guitar. The Galaxy Tab is on an easel, and it says "Creativity cannot be crushed." That's their tagline. That's a good shot across the bow.
Man,
that's good.
It's really good. Creativity cannot be crushed. Yeah, that says it all. It says it all, and it explains, concisely exactly what the problem was with the Apple ad. Is that's what was communicated to people, is that Apple, we will crush your creative dreams, in service of our tiny little rectangle.
Yeah, I mean, I do like I like the ad. I think the original ad is good, but that's because I just simply don't see it in the ways that most of these people have, and it's like I'm in a tiny minority here. I'm not sensitive to the things that they're sensitive to. I don't care about the wanton destruction of property to make an ad. I'm not worried about the children at all. We should probably expose them to more horrors. If the child is the father of the man, then we should work diligently to prepare that man for war. That's probably not the iPad. It's not the crowd that's going to be jazzed to run out and order the newest iPad. Now, did you happen to see what Justine said about this?
No, but I did,
because I'm curious.
I wanted to sneak in.
I'll look at this as you go on.
Yeah, I wanted to sneak in real quick that the creatives are what built Apple. So that's what makes it that much more egregious, is that their audience are these people. It built their company on being like the easiest to use personal computer for creatives. That's why I got into Apples. When I was in school a million years ago, all we worked on were Apples. And, PCs, IBMs and PCs were really relegated to being like for businesses and for gamers. Apple was never for gamers. That was really the domain of the PC.
Yeah.
And businesses were on PC. But the Apple, that was for, the filmmaker and the artist, the illustrator. It just makes it that much more tone deaf. I think tone deaf was a phrase I saw a few times and people complaining about this. I think that's
It's a horrible mismatch.
That's the proper phrase for this ad is tone deaf. It's like, oh man, these are the exact people that you need to fluff. And they're the people who are angry about this because the business people, I think most probably average people are not going to have this reaction. You didn't have this reaction. And really, in a lot of respects, I didn't have this reaction. My reaction to the commercial was simply from my marketing brain lit up. That was my reaction, was my like marketing brain lit up like fireworks. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no, this was not how I would have done this at all. That was my reaction to it. Not that I was mad.
That's really where I was going with it. By the way, I don't see any feedback about this ad from Justine, which means
she skipped it. Yeah.
It means that I don't know what I think. I'll know for sure what I think when she finally weighs in, and I just do that, and I think that. But where I was going is that if I think it's a good ad, if that ad is made for me, Apple has blown it. Apple has blown it. I should think that Apple stuff is overproduced and not worth the however much it is to get your very slight upgrade from one version of the device to the next. That is what I should think about every Apple ad. And I have a MacBook Air that I have loved for years. That's my second MacBook Air. The first one was so good. I've had iPhones since the iPhone 4S. Maybe it was the 4. Either way, a long time. I still have an iPhone. I have a MacBook Pro for work. We used iMac and the Mac Mini, which I loved. I'm not a Mac hater. I'm so immersed in Apple that my one single departure from it is the main gear machine that I use every day, which I love that too. That is fantastic. So like I'm not an anti-Apple person. I really like what they do. But I don't care about all of those things that get the creatives, really excited. I'm not an Apple person who waits in lines. I don't even know if people still do that, but in the earlier editions of the iPhone, people were camping out to get the things at midnight, and that was a thing. A girl I dated in the earliest iPhone era was one of those people. She was super into the iPhone and had done that camping to get the newly released thing. Well, you need to make ads for her. You need to make ads for Justine. You need to make ads for the, I don't know. I actually wouldn't make them for the guy freaking out about the danger to children. He's on his own. But everybody else who's normal, but also prides themselves in the creative, the aesthetics of the thing, just literally all of it, the whole Apple ethos. That's who you make the ads for. And they made the mistake of making an ad that I would think is cool.
Yeah. It's just the wrong audience. It is the wrong. And I want to say, because I don't think I have actually said before, I also thought it was visually cool. Like it looks amazing. The way that it's shot is absolutely stunning. It is just pure eye candy to look at, but that doesn't matter when the framing is bad. And the framing was legendarily bad on this one, because I can't even remember the last time something like this happened in which a commercial just angered people to the point where everyone's talking about it. And maybe there's like maybe there's a bit of a Streisand effect here where because it's so notorious, they get more attention. I don't know if that outweighs any people who are, I can't imagine people who are hardcore Apple people like no longer purchasing their products due to this ad. Maybe that's possible. It seems a bit far-fetched to me. But overall, it was just obviously something that people really reacted to on an emotional level, unlike anything that I can remember in recent memory.
So I have some questions. I want to put you on the spot with a couple big ones. Okay. But I want to ask, are you okay with running long?
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
You're not going to expire.
No, I'm not
Okay.
going to expire, and I don't have a phone full of like 78 notifications, which usually happens by this point when we start recording. But I'm pretty clear, remarkably, right now.
I do. I just don't care.
Okay.
So, I'm cool there. But I have two questions. I see Jen is in the chat as well. Jen, you missed a great screed about the planning versus spontaneous. Little Russia, little China. That's good. But I actually want to go back to that and question number two, and applying it to the stuff we're talking about. Question number one, though, is there any chance at all that this ad is made for a global audience who isn't bothered by the framing in a way the hardcore Apple types are, and that Apple simply doesn't care about them? Because realistically, all of the people in this thread who care so much, what the hell are they going to do instead? They are not leaving Apple. They're not leaving the ecosystem. If they buy the thing, if they're boycotting it, it's going to be until it goes on sale. They're not out of it forever. So if you've got them, what are you actually losing if you can make something appealing to a massive global market? Is this possible? That's I'm asking this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's possible. Anything is possible. My rebuttal to that would be that that's a bad idea. I think that's a bad choice to make when it comes to marketing, because what you really should be doing, and frankly, I see this with these like video game and anime adaptations as well. So maybe I can like bring other people on board with my thinking with this. What in my opinion, what you should want to do, whether you are trying to make a Halo TV show or you're trying to make an Apple ad, is that you make those, well, you can't make everyone happy, but you make as many of those hardcore fans happy. And then you bring everyone else in on top of it. So the real goal with any of this stuff, like I said, whether it's, like that Cowboy Bebop Netflix show was horrible because the hardcores hated it. And now they're not going to talk about it except for how bad it is. And now everybody who maybe would have tuned in if they heard from the hardcores that it was good aren't going to, because they think it sucks. You really need let core as like ignition for something to blow up. So I think that it's a crazy idea to do the opposite, which is to ignore the core or even anger the core in the hopes that you can miraculously get a whole bunch of other people on board with your thing. They seem to do it with these TV shows a lot. And I don't know what goes into that thought process, but it doesn't make sense to me. And I think that that's why a lot of those shows fail.
Well, as I asked you the question and I'm describing what could possibly be, it sort of hit me that you could do all of those things if it had the framing that was kind of creative and fit how you described. So like, as I'm asking, I'm like, okay, well, even if this is true, it's the second best option.
Yeah, it's just, you wouldn't choose that. I think if you were consciously aware of that and you had an idea that could fulfill both promises, which is to make your hardcore fans happy and then also to bring in new people to your fold. I mean, it's like this with YouTube. Like when you're making a YouTube video, you want the people who subscribe to your channel to want to watch your video. And then you hope that on top of that, it has a broad enough appeal that new people will find your YouTube channel so that you can grow and get more subscribers, more views and everything. And we haven't talked about this, but that's a major question that I have when it comes to these video game adaptations and anime adaptations that seem purposefully antagonistic to the hardcore fan base of those intellectual properties. Like, I don't get that at all, man. Like, that boggles my mind when I see, well, this isn't, our Cowboy Bebop show isn't for you or whatever it is. It's like, well, then who is it for? Why don't you start with me and then find other people who are unfamiliar with the property? That seems like a better idea. I don't know. Am I insane?
Right. Boss Threads mentioned the TARDIS earlier is that, device you can go into and it's expansive. Doctor Who is dealing with exactly what you're talking about. They're dealing with that right now. The new Doctor, Yeah, the new doctor is substantially different than any of the old doctors in quite a few ways. And I'm referencing it because he just said, I think today, that if you don't like this version of the Doctor, turn off your TV. And the viewership on Doctor Who has plummeted. Well, they did change the channel. they said no. And I understand doing something completely different with even a legacy property like that. There's discussion about it with James Bond. And it's not just the aspect of race. That's what came up with James Bond was race and gender. Can James Bond be Jill Bond? Can James Bond be Idris Elba? That's different, though. It's can James Bond be completely different than the James Bonds that you knew before in style, substance, whatever. That's what's happened with Doctor Who. What I don't get is that antagonism where you want to do something completely different, but do you have to go to war with the people who like the old thing? It seems like you would want to do both. You'd want to make them all happy, and the Star Wars franchise has had both successes and failures with exactly this sort of thing. They've done some new things that fit the old audience really well. Everybody was happy. It was great development of a long-standing franchise. And then others, like, what are you doing? Same with Marvel. Marvel's done some stuff that they wanted to do a new direction. The diehards hated it, and then they flipped them off. It's like, well, how do you think this is going to play out when you're antagonistic with it? This seems like a soft antagonism from Apple, where it's dismissive in a way. It's like, we don't care about that whole creative ethos that we've spent 30 years now. Is it 30? No, it's 40. Sorry, 40 years building up from that hammer going through the Big Brother screen. We don't care that matters to any of you. And we're going to do a thing that just appeals to everybody else.
I don't know if that was the thought process or if no one involved ever thought about it from the perspective of people who would be bothered by it. I mean, that's my guess. I have a hard time believing that there was any sort of malice involved or antagonism on their part. I don't see what they would have to gain from that. I think it was just a goof. They goofed up. And you really don't know how people are going to react to things. I mean, this is why there are focus groups for movies and shows and, stuff like that. They do focus group testing. That's the whole point of that is, you have people who are planning this thing and they all think it's a great idea. So it's like, all right, let's get like a whole group of random people in here to see what they think of it. And it's like, oh, well, they absolutely hated this. So let's just make some changes or, they were confused by it. Frankly, that's just what happens on a larger scale than something that we've talked about a lot on this podcast, which is just having at least one other person to bounce your ideas off of, or to bounce your writing off of, or to give you feedback on your editing or whatever it is. It's like, dude, you are missing things that you don't know. There are blind spots in all of us. Throughout no matter what endeavor you're engaged within, there are blind spots. You can't see everything from every angle. It's just not possible. No matter how good you are from seeing things from 7 different angles, there might be an 8th angle that you can't see that's really important and undermines the other 7. And you need someone else's perspective.
Yeah. No, you've got to have that. And it's crazy to me because how many people were involved in making this ad. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And they either ignored it or nobody was willing to say it, which is possible in a lot of organizations.
That's my guess, is that people were afraid. Yeah.
If you want to see exactly how this sort of thing plays out, go to the Wikipedia page for the Challenger disaster. NASA dealt with precisely this issue and people died. It has happened many times in high stakes scenarios. Nobody died from this ad, and one girl ended up recording a nice song on a Samsung Galaxy Tab. So it all worked out. But my next question here is, we've talked about, and I'm so thrilled because it brings what we talked about at the beginning with the gas station man and brings it to Apple framing. Everything that you're describing here with the framing and all of that is planning. It is the management of a thing. It's pushing and pulling on the idea, the execution of it from the top down. That didn't happen properly in this Apple ad, and look what happened. Now, I said at the beginning, it shouldn't work that way. It's going to stink. You're going to get the wrong outcome if you don't let it go organically and go from, the ground up. How do you, and we know the benefits of that. How do you, Kevin Lieber, as a marketer / longstanding successful creative, how do you square these two things? That the best stuff comes from this organic process that cannot be planned, and also the best stuff comes from from doing kind of a bit of top-down planning and management, because they both seem true to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly they're both true. In my experience, what gets the problems arise when you have how can I describe this? Sort of when you have people who can make creative decisions who aren't actually really involved in the process. So you see this in television, you see this in Hollywood, where, I mean, I saw this a little bit when Michael and Jake were working on their shows for YouTube. Because what happens is, you have a small team of people who are up to their eyeballs in all these creative decisions. So on Could You Survive the Movies, that was mostly Jake and his creative partner, Eric Langley. Those two guys are pretty much at the helm of, 90% of the decisions that are being made. Well, there were also a handful of other people on the production side as well who were involved. But, I would say all told, even though you end up having, a dozen people on set doing all kinds of different things, there's really like 4 people really making the decisions for everything.
Okay.
3 or 4, maybe.
A small cadre.
It's like a band. It's like like a band. It's like you're the Beatles. There's like 4 people, that write all and perform all the music. You have your drummer, you're the bass player, 2 guitars. You're the Beatles. What happens is someone else is footing the bill. Someone else is writing the checks. Yeah. YouTube's writing the checks. Paramount is making a movie. They're writing the checks. Disney's writing the checks. And they have their own whole team of people who are in charge of the checks, who are now also in charge and have actually more creative, they have more decision-making power than the people making the show. They have more decision-making power than the people grinding 16 hours a day making the show. So they can come in and say, I don't like this, change that. And now they have to, because that person who is like in an office all day saw a script or a daily or, whatever the process is. And they were like, I don't get it. You need to do this differently. I think that's when problems happen, is that you have like this bureaucracy. I think maybe bureaucracy. So collaboration is not the problem. Collaboration is the dream. That's the goal. You need collaboration. So let's make this distinction here as I'm talking through my own thoughts of what your question is that I think that there is a delineation between the creative collaboration that's required to make something great. And again, think of like a band. You have Guns N' Roses. It's not just Axl Rose. You need Slash. You need Duff. You need the collaboration of musicians to make Guns N' Roses. And then you have the bureaucracy, which is like somebody at Geffen Records or whatever telling Guns N' Roses that the Slash's solo is too long. That's right. That's when the process goes awry, I think, in very general terms.
The trick to all of it really is, and like Jen says in the chat here about people making the decisions about a creative thing without really understanding it or without the input of the creatives, that's when you get problems. And what I'm hearing from what you just described is that you've just got to find the optimal blend of the socket and the plug here, where you get enough of the bottom up creative and enough of the top down management of a thing where you just find the best fit, which is like the ultimate murky, no formula for it process. Is why it seems like it's why the successful people on both ends of it are so rare and so successful, because they've figured out how to make that impossible scenario, if not work, be useful.
Yeah, it comes down to people. That's what it comes down to, is individuals, who have that talent to know when to push back on something. And that's when, again, it comes back to not being able to really plan it top down very well, because it really, all of the good work happens in the weeds. It doesn't happen from someone wearing a monocle and a top hat, sort of sketching out what like the perfect Cowboy Bebop Netflix adaptation would look like.
Right. Yeah. And this is something that we need to talk about in the future, is how you get to be able to do that on either side of this thing, whether you're the creative one who has to work with the overlords, or whether you are trying to develop a creative project that somebody else is doing, because this is something that we've both done well enough with. We know how to deal with the people involved on either end of this. I want to say that I've been for months now, 4 months with one, month or two, whatever, with another, working with two very different people on their developing writing for YouTube. And the first thing with both of them was a total of 5 to 6 hours of just talking about things, about them. Nothing to do with their idea, nothing to do with YouTube, nothing, because I wanted to know who they were to the best that you can kind of figure out in 5 or 6 hours of talking to somebody you're not organically friends with. But figuring out how to do that fit and how to make that work is wholly dependent on being able to work with a particular person, to know what's going to resonate with them, to know whether it stresses them out not to get clear, immediate criticism of a thing. Like some people, if you try to sugarcoat a problem, it's really stressful for them because they know there's a problem and they just want to know what it is. And then other people, recoil at that directness, right?
Yeah, I'm in the
former. You have to figure out.
I want you to tell me exactly. I hate that. I hate beating around the bush. It's like, what is the problem?
Yeah. And some people, it's, they crawl into a bit of a shell when they've, just gotten kind of slapped down with a thing.
Right.
So you figure out whether you're that person or whether you're Kevin, and you do this by finding out as much as you can about who they are, the stuff they like doing, so that you can make analogies that fit with understanding that they might have in another area. We realized a long time ago how many YouTube creatives have a background in music. That's one reason why we so frequently use elements of music as an analogy, because it resonates with almost everybody who would listen to this podcast. And the ones who are not musicians themselves still know what we're talking about. They still appreciate it. So that's a very effective thing. But when you get to that on a personal level, with you, I want to make a video game reference. With me, if it's a music reference, that it's not going to be whoever is on your hat that day.
Yeah, right.
And also finding a blend where you're not pandering and you're constantly trying to make Kenny Rogers references to me that don't quite fit. So this whole thing is a personality and people game, even before you get to the creative project. It's highly personal stuff. And I would love to know, and we'll never know this, but I would love to know, washboards and spoons. Good God. I would venture to guess that the Zach Hadel and Michael Cusack working relationship started with just talking about stuff, just identifying mutual interests and shared, whatever, and just, being two dudes. And eventually, when it came time, we did this.
And I think everyone on Smiling Friends is like that. It seems like they're just friends first.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brendan and Hans, who's the story editor I saw on the
they're friends.
last bit. That's right. That's right. And they know how to work with each other because they know each other. You don't even have to like the person. You don't have to be like legitimate friends with them, but you do have to know them.
You have to know what buttons not to push. First of all, that's really important. You need to know when to back off. You need to know when to push. You need to know all that stuff, or else they bail and or they hate you. And either way, it blows up. And this is what happens with bands too. Just to go back to music, but bands break up.
Yeah, and the circumstances do change. The bands tend to break up when they've achieved a level of success that is not the situation that they all knew each other in before.
Yeah.
And we've seen, YouTube people do this. We've seen people in YouTube themselves, the solo people, change dramatically in some cases. iDubbbz 2014 is a very different man than iDubbbz 2024. And that's okay because people just change over time and have, just things change for them. So you have to know this. You have to know this and constantly reevaluate it. But if it's like, so let's say tomorrow you start working on a documentary project with iDubbbz. If you do it as if he's in his Filthy Frank collab era, it's not going to work. You're not going to get a good result for either of you. The product, whatever it is probably going to suck. It's a horrible mismatch because you're not operating in that, I know who you are, you know who I am, let's make a thing discourse. Well, this might be the real problem with that Apple ad is that whatever happened, however it came to be, they probably had a problem. They probably had a problem with working together in the operations and how everybody interfaced.
Yeah, it comes down to people. All right. So before we wrap up, you mentioned this meme movie like an hour ago about, Antoine Dodson and Double Rainbow. What was that movie called?
Well, I'd forgotten it at the time. Yeah, I linked it in the episode chat, but just the title itself, which I'd totally forgotten, was a factor here. The title of the thing itself reveals the problem. Okay, this was meant to be called The Chronicles of Rickroll. What if the internet was a movie? That is the type of really shitty idea you get. I also forgot it had the Leroy Jenkins guy in there. I mean, this was the ultimate super group. And oh boy, I don't know who Lady Emily is. I know the name, but I can't remember anything about her. When I looked up this trailer to link it, I see there's a video from 2 years ago that is 36 minutes long called The Lost $60 million film about internet memes.
$60 million? That's not possible.
I have no idea. No idea how that $60 million number gets in the titles or in the title here, but oh boy.
No way that's possible. I need to know now where that $60 million figure came from, because there's no way that $60 million was spent on this. It's impossible.
No.
It's impossible.
Unless there was a company that was set up that got a ton of seed funding, and this was like the hallmark of why that company failed. Maybe they're using $60 million of overall investment and tacking that on to this specific movie. Because there were some big money things back in that era that probably did not pay off. I remember when I had my wisdom teeth out and developed a long lingering infection. I watched literally every documentary I could. I finished the documentaries on Hulu at that time. There weren't a lot, so it's not like I did like 5,000, but I did hundreds.
That's crazy. Yeah, you got to the end of Hulu.
I got to the end of Hulu. Yeah, at least the documentary category. And then I watched the Rocket Jump series for what it was, and there was another one, Video Game High.
Video Game High.
Yeah. I watched all of that too when I was on opioids. But yeah, there's money flowing to the Freddy projects back then, and I don't think the ROI was fantastic on those. So it's quite possible that some company had a $60 million division, and all they have to show for it is a trailer that is, in terms of production, quite bad. Didn't you have problems with that?
Oh, it was.
I forget.
It was. The trailer is awful. It is very poorly shot. It's very poorly edited. There's audio gaffes in it. You know, some of the audio. Like I remember particularly, there's a scene at like a big long table, and the audio is terrible there. What I said to you was that this just goes to show, like, people don't realize how hard it is to make movies or make TV shows, whatever. I mean, TV shows these days are a lot of, single cam. They're basically like movies anyway. It's so hard. Like, unless you have gone to like film school screeners, or you went to film school and you can see like the projects that people make at that level, like amateur level. Oh man, you have no idea, because you've only ever watched the greatest movies like have ever made. Like, literally 99% of people, all they've watched are the greatest TV shows and films that have ever been made. Well, yeah, okay. Most of it, the amateur stuff is insanely hard to do. And yeah, so just watch the trailer for The Chronicles of Rick Roll. What If the Internet Was a Movie? And you'll see what I mean. What it looks like to watch, someone who isn't a fantastic filmmaker trying to make a movie. It's awful.
Oh.
It's awful, because film, this is its whole other topic, but a film is everything. It is audio, it is visual, it is photography, it is music, it is, sound bed and special effects and audio effects, everything. Foley, acting, directing, blocking.
God.
It's
wardrobe,
lighting,
wardrobe,
freaking
props.
Yes, the props. It's everything. It is like, hey, why don't we combine every single imaginable creative endeavor and turn it into one project that you can sit down and watch? That's what a movie is. It's everything.
Yeah.
So imagine how hard it is to do everything well. It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible when you put it like that. That's another future topic is actually how easy writing is because it's just writing. I don't think people understand how ridiculously simple writing is because it's contained the way it's contained.
And I didn't even mention writing. I forgot writing. Yes, writing too is in film.
Oh yeah, which is the writing and the editing and all of that is like the basis of film. More so than the props. But yeah, and the slightest goofy thing, and it can be something like Foley, which for the uninitiated, the Foley is like the sound effects that you have to add, right? If you have a really bad one, that's a ruiner. It is the proverbial nugget of feces in the punch bowl that's otherwise good. And occasionally it can be a legendary thing. The Wilhelm scream is the ultimate example of this. Nobody without looking, no normal person rather, can tell me what movie the Wilhelm scream came out of. You just can't do it. You have to really know the lore to know what film that originated from.
Was it Conan?
But everybody knows this scream.
Do you know?
Oh no, it was an old Western. I want to say like Wagon Train or some 50s Western. I mean, it wasn't a big movie.
Okay. Oh,
if I remember, it was a guy on a horse who gets shot like by an arrow from an Indian or something, and that's why he's like, ah! But yeah, I mean, so that's the thing. This entire movie, this whole thing you just described that was happening in a film gets discarded and thrown in the garbage disposal of history as one man's goofy scream endures for the ages, to the point where it becomes a thing people want to insert in every movie they can.
Yeah.
This is delicate.
Jen in the episode chat says The Charge at Feather River is the film that the Wilhelm scream is from. I have no idea. Boss Thread says Distant Drums. So now we have an argument brewing over the Wilhelm scream origin film.
Oh, fight to the death. Well, look, okay. So the Wikipedia agrees with Boss Threads.
Charge is where the name came from.
Yeah. Okay. I either way. Now we've got two people who have an answer to this, and they don't agree. This is murky, right? This whole thing is murky, despite it being an iconic thing in all of film for 75 years.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. The Conan thing, I was misremembering something. I did a video I think it was one of the first Mind Blow episodes where there's some scream from Conan the Barbarian that was digitized and used in like Golden Axe or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I might have just made that up, but I might have not. So maybe if you Google Conan the Barbarian Golden Axe scream, maybe you get some results. I don't know. Anything else, Matt?
We do have,
before we wrap up.
Yes. This is very important. This is very important because it's the, okay. Here's the clarity on the Wilhelm scream. So they're both right. This is fantastic. Well, Jen says Boss is right. He's ultimately right that the sound came from Sheb Woolley, who, had a bit of a presence in country music. Sheb Woolley, did the, Purple People Eater song is probably his most famous. You know, that stupid song about, 10-headed purple people eater, whatever.
Yeah.
He supposedly did the scream in Distant Drums in 1951, and then it was repurposed in The Charge at Feather River, which is what Jen said. And the character's name was Private Wilhelm. Okay, so that's how you get the name Wilhelm Scream, despite Sheb Woolley actually making the sound 2 years before. So it originates in Distant Drums, but it's named for how it was used in The Charge at Feather River in 1953. This is good. We solved this in real time.
You learned something right at the very end. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us this week. If you want to become a patron and support the podcast, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. Thank you to all of our patrons for making this podcast happen. We will be back next week. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week. And the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and the Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Ferry-kun, Jen Mafasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Manahim, Natsu, Penny Piddler, Ryan Steer, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Bidioger. And a tremendous shout-out to our elite baby gang commanders. Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, and of course, Trev's dead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer, editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yosua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it, and thanks to Main Gear for powering all our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.